All right, guys, it is time. We finally have the release of Akuma, and with Akuma has come the Season 2 balance patch. So we didn't just get Akuma released, we had a very in-depth Season 2 patch notes and full patch changes from the Street Fighter official account. So they went into, on Twitter for some reason, they put these like graphic blurbs about the overall direction, universal changes, and then the individual characters, their philosophy for why they made the changes that they did. So it's really actually very useful. So I do recommend going through the Twitter thread and actually reading up on the logic and reasoning behind the changes that they applied for the characters, because it gives a lot of context and helps make sense about what these changes actually are. But beyond that, what I wanted to cover right now is the universal changes. So if you go to the full patch notes themselves, there's tons and tons of information here with all the changes per character, but there's a number of significant universal changes. So in this video, we're going to cover what the universal changes actually mean and what it means for you and your gameplay, break it all down in detail, and then later on in another video, we'll go over the overall winners and losers from the patch on a character by character basis. So let's go ahead and get into it and break down what these changes mean for you and your gameplay. Okay, so a lot of these changes are actually just about changing the buffer windows for holding over directional moves so that you're less likely to accidentally get special moves because you wiggle the direction and then press a button like in a long window later. So there's some minor input engine things that they change. I don't think it's that significant, just hoping to tweak things so that you get less accidental inputs. To me, the first big change is the change to drive parry, and we already speculated about this a little bit, but they say the throw hurt box has been expanded while the technique is being performed. Hurt box from the 3rd frame and later has been expanded. The shortest possible active parry hitbox time has changed from 8 to 12 frames. Recovery after the active frames has changed from 29 to 33, and after absorbing an attack, the time until drive gauge starts to auto regenerate has changed from 60 to 20. So a lot going on there, but basically they both buffed and nerfed parry. So let's go ahead and show how they changed that. So the first one they mentioned is about the hurt box being expanded. So let's show actually how that works. So here's a quick example here. I'm going to have Guile here do just block, and then we're going to have him do nothing in this situation. So if he blocks my stand medium here and I go for throw, you see here it's going to whiff, right? I'm not in range after this to land a throw. Even if I drive rush in and actually get the plus frames, I'm not in range for throw here. It's not going to connect. However, if I have him do parry after, throw connects. The hurt box is wider both for throws and physical hits. So I believe also there's another example to show with physical hits. So if they block stand fierce here and I press jab after, nothing connects, right? But if they press parry, you notice how they actually intersected with the parry with the jab. So why does this change matter? This also is in conjunction with another change that they made, which is the parry startup and recovery. So previously, parry startup, or the number of active frames that you had at minimum for a parry where you're actually blue and can absorb things, was 8 frames. So if you tapped it, you would get 8 frames. If you look at the stun meter or the frame meter at the bottom, you see the purple, that's the active frames where you can absorb things with parry. That is now gone from 8 at minimum without holding the parry to 12. So no matter what, you're going to get 12 frames of a window where you can actually absorb moves when you tap parry. And then the blue, the recovery here, they increased that from 29 to 33. So in total, they added, 8 frames more to the entire length of a minimum parry. And if you tap parry and then try to walk around, you can feel it. You are stuck in the mud for quite some time after tapping parry and whiffing it in neutral. So if people are, tapping parry like this, it's very easy now to safely walk in and throw people, because you can throw them from further away, and you cannot tech during the parry recovery. During parry recovery, you can block high or low, but you cannot do any other actions. You can't jump, you can't move, you can't tech, and you can't counter DI. So because of this, if people whiff a parry like this, it's going to be much easier to walk in and throw. So if you see it says punish counter throw, that's a guaranteed throw. So you can do this really late relative to before. So that was still a punish counter throw. That was still a punish counter throw. That one wasn't. That could have been teched. So you can see how much more easier it is to get these parries, especially if people are doing it in neutral. It's going to be very easy to walk in and throw people to punish them for attempting a random perfect parry. And the other implication of this is, of course, just DIing them. It's going to be much easier to do this tech where if people turn blue, just react to it with DI. So if you look at the frame meter at the bottom, in the bottom row, that's going to represent Guile's actual meter right there. If I do DI and it connects before, there's no black bars, before the blue turns into the yellow there from the DI, you see the 29 with the blue, 28 right there with the blue into the yellow. That means that it's a guaranteed DI. He's in recovery from the parry and he can't counter DI. So you could potentially react to people turning blue and punish them with a wall splat with DI, and then, you know, get a whole combo for them attempting the parry. Now, of course, they can just hold the parry. It's kind of like a mind game at that point. They can just hold the parry and absorb it. Like, there's nothing preventing them from just sitting there holding the parry and absorbing it. But, you know, you're safe. you're safe if they hold the parry on your DI. So it's really a huge option to incorporate and really punishing for people tapping parry. Yeah, it's not a punish counter because you are blocking the DI. Even though you're stuck in parry recovery, remember, you can still block. So they're blocking the DI in the corner, they get wall splatted. That's why you don't see punish counter. And the other implication is because of the hitbox increase, it's actually a buff to parry in certain situations. So here I'm going to have Guile perfect boom and then do his light boom. And I already demonstrated this theoretically before it's on the Clips channel. But you know, if you're trying to perfect parry the heavy boom, which is Guile is doing here, it's the faster boom. And second boom he's doing is the light boom, which is a much slower boom timing. So you're kind of having to guess at certain ranges what speed of sonic boom he's doing, and you're not going to really know ahead of time which one he's doing. And so if you're trying to look to like parry the fireball and get a perfect parry, if you're thinking of the heavy boom timing, well, you're probably going to press your second parry much too early to get the perfect parry in the second boom. So previous to this patch, what would happen is you would whiff your parry and then you would also block the fireball. But due to this 4 frame increase to the active frames on the tap parry, there's going to be a lot more situations where instead, if you're early on your parry, you just get the absorbing. So you can still miss it and just completely whiff your parry, but it's more forgiving. Like even that one right there, I don't think that parry would have absorbed the fireball in the previous patch. So it's a lot more forgiving for these fireball mix-ups so that you're not just like whiffing parry, trying to perfect parry the fireballs and both losing the meter to whiffing the parry and also then blocking the fireball, doing more drive chip damage. And the reason why this is relevant is because people always do tap parry against fireballs because they want to option select the movement option after. So like if I want to perfect parry the boom, the reason why I'm doing perfect parry, not just hold parry, is because I want to option select a movement option after. So like if I want to do maybe something like a drive rush after, you can option select that. So you just attempt the perfect parry and input drive rush. If you don't get the perfect parry, it doesn't come out. If you do get the perfect parry, it will come out. So you just do the input regardless. So there you go. So people will always do generally parry and then some kind of movement option or some kind of other move after. Like it might be something like holding up after parrying these fireballs. And if I get a perfect parry, I'll get a jump to come out. So that's why having this failsafe where if you're too early on your perfect parry option select on the fireball, you still at least get a regular parry. It helps save your drive meter. So it's definitely a buff to dealing with these kind of fireball trap situations. The other thing is also your drive meter will start regaining faster after absorbing things with a parry. So there's another buff. Previously, it was 60 frames, as it notes here. 60 frames after you absorb something, you'll start recovering drive meter. Now it's down to 20 frames. So that is indeed a buff. You get your drive meter back faster for successfully parrying something. If I'm down to this amount of drive meter, it starts recovering much faster. So sitting around parrying Guile sonic booms is actually going to be much improved for the combination of those two reasons. You'll regain the drive meter sooner, and also you'll be less likely to whiff your parry on the booms. So I really like this change. I think this change is good because it buffs parry where I think he was too weak. I think parry sometimes was kind of weak in these situations where people were mixing up their fireball timings and you're getting slapped around mid-screen and just losing drive meter left and right. Same thing with like a JP, for example, a Chun-Li, a Guile. But also tap parry in neutral was kind of stupid, and also in the corner as well, fishing for perfect parry was very strong and rewarding. They definitely nerfed that heavily by making it much more punishable, and you're so stuck in the mud, people will gain ground on footsies as well. If you whiff that, people might just drive rush up and throw you much more often. So I think this is a really great change to the parry itself. But that's not all. There's more nerfs. There's actually much more nerfs. All right, so perfect parry has its own set of adjustments here. The overall gauge fluctuation from a counterattack after perfect parry has been reduced. This adjustment is not just for the first attack, but affects all attacks until the combo ends. So this was crazy when I saw this. Super art gauge increase has changed from 100% to 80% for both the attacker and damage taker. Drive gauge increase for the attacker has changed from 100% to 50%. The drive gauge decrease for the damage taker has changed from 100% to 50%. Huge nerfs to perfect parry in terms of its reward when successfully landing it. So, for example, let's try to set up a common situation here in the corner. Okay. So say you land a perfect parry in the corner just like this. Notice anything weird right off the bat? Previously in the patch, this heavy kick starter, this punish counter, would immediately do 1 full bar of drive gauge damage. Now it's only doing half a bar. So if I just show this raw, that is a full bar. Now it's doing half a bar. So that's actually a huge change. So, but it's not only that, it keeps going, right? So if I were to do my level 2, normally supers do not scale with their drive meter chip damage. Normally it's a set amount, even like no matter how many hits you do into a combo. If you combo into a super, it'll do like with level 1 half a bar, level 2 full bar, and level 3 a bar and a half, and CA 2 bars. This level 2, instead of doing 1 full bar, is doing half a bar. And I mean, if I were to do level 1, it's going to do a quarter of a bar. And then not only that, if I go into level 3, instead of doing a bar and a half, it does what, 75% of a bar? Huge nerfs to this. And same thing with DI. Like, this is a combo route that combos into DI. I spent level 2 and a DI and a punish counter starter, and I did a bar and a half of drive gauge damage. That would have done 3 bars of drive gauge damage off a perfect parry in the previous patch, which was a huge momentum swing. So I think this is a huge nerf to a lot of characters. Say goodbye to like JP getting a random perfect parry, popping level 2 and taking half your drive meters. And just in general, characters you get random perfect parry in the corner, then get a combo into a CA or a level 3, and then suddenly you're in burnout. This significantly nerfs the utility or the reward from a perfect parry. The utility is still there to a degree, but you just cannot massacre people's drive gauge from a perfect parry. So offense, when people are cornered, I would say, is improved in that sense, because it was very swingy. Getting perfect parried in the corner could just be the end of your life. So that was definitely a big momentum shifter and made this game very volatile. And I think that nerfs certain characters more than others. Like, I think that's kind of a big nerf to Ed, because I think that having the ability to take that much drive gauge damage off a whim is super important. But I think that makes sense in general with what they're aiming for, because, you know, there's other things they buffed defensively. They had to nerf parry and perfect parry. And beyond that, also, your meter build for super meter is also nerfed. So after this perfect parry, you're building significantly less super meter right there. I don't think this route ever built like a full bar super meter, but it's definitely nerfed, right? They nerfed it from 100% scaling to 80% scaling for the super art gauge. So you're gonna build meter much slower in these situations. And yeah. Oh, the other thing I didn't mention is your drive gauge recovers slower as well. So for these hits, you're also building less drive gauge, just like you're depleting less drive gauge from the opponent as well. So basically your meter building and your meter depletion ability from perfect parry is extremely nerfed. What if you do heavy punch DI? I already covered the DI earlier. Everything is scaled. The DI, the supers, they're all scaled. Everything. The level 3, the level 2, the level 1, the DI, everything is 50% scaled off rip and stays that way, which is rare because usually drive gauge damage from those moves does not scale. But from perfect parry, it now all scales. Just like your damage starts off at 50%, your drive gauge regen and depletion is at 50%, and your super art is now at 80%. So less rewarding in that front, which I kind of like overall. I think I'm a little worried personally about not being able to deplete drive meter, but it was a really swingy kind of mechanic. You should be a little bit less scared of pressuring people due to that. How am I going to beat Honda now? That's a good point. So we're not talking about individual characters right now, but I think Honda is insanely buffed because of the changes like this. I think Honda is so incredibly buffed this patch. I think it's a little, you know, I'm going to skip ahead here and cover another universal change, which I don't think is on the universal change list. So they don't mention this in the universal changes, but you know, the other common strategy after perfect parry was back throw. So of course, also, instead of taking a bar of drive gauge, you only get half a bar. But look at the distance. So previously, it was very easy to immediately go into throw loops after back throw. So you could just back throw people after getting the perfect parry, and then, you know, the world is yours, have fun. But now the way they set it up is that you cannot walk up and throw people again. This is a universal change. They adjusted the pushback on back throws into the corner for all characters. But of course, you can still get plus frames and get mixed. You just have to spend meter. So like, you can get in and throw people. You're just gonna have to spend drive rush. And it's still a very powerful mix. Like here, let me show you an example I found. So say you land a back throw into the corner like this. Now you can't really walk up regular grab. But with like Luke, for example, they just auto time this to just hit meaty as hell. So, I mean, there's still a real big incentive to not press there. So you're still in range to get offensive pressure and Oki. It's just that if they're committing to walk up grab, you will be able to jab them. But of course, you know, all the characters I think can do drive rush into throw. I think. Or can Luke not do that? Oh, maybe Luke can't. Maybe it's character by character. I take it back. Not every character can drive rush into grab. So they compensate by making the distance short for Luke and giving him a lot of buttons he can press. So it's going to be kind of, you know, a mind game there. But yeah, I guess you can't necessarily get auto time meaty grabs. Oh, that's interesting. But that's definitely a big change across the board. You won't immediately be put into throw loop situations off rip like that. Okay, next one to cover. This one talking about drive rush. Adjustment expanded the attack and throw hurt boxes of the parry drive rush so that they're no longer smaller than the ones for drive parry. My understanding is that this is just matching the extended hurt box during like the first portion of the drive rush. I don't think they actually made the entire dash portion have a bigger hurt box. I think that was something I was like, wait, does that mean that? I don't think that's what they mean. So I just want to clarify that. I have nothing to demo for that. I think they just mean that if you cancel the drive rush, the portion where you're still sort of in the stationary stance, it'll have the same hurt box equal to the dry parry, because you know you go into drive rush out of dry parry. So I think they're just trying to make it clear that it's the same hurt box. But I think during the drive rush, I don't think people have wider hurt boxes. I could be proven wrong there, but that's my understanding as of right now. I don't want people to get their hopes up and thinking that drive rush is easier to check or anything like that. I don't think they went down that route. They want you to still eat some drive rush for sure. All right, drive impact. This one's not really a noticeable change, or makes a change rather to the gameplay. It's kind of a quality of life thing. The buffer to do your move after the drive impact ends when you get like a wall splat instead of a punish counter is increased. So if they block the drive impact like that or get hit and there's no punish counter freeze, it's a little bit easier to buffer your move and to get it to come out frame one. So I guess some people were missing that occasionally, so they made that a bigger window. And here's the big one. So there's two types of drive reversals now, and they mentioned the regular drive reversal first. So what do they do to drive reversal? Recovery on block has changed from -8 to -6 frames. Attack hitbox has been expanded downward, so techniques with a low profile can no longer avoid this attack. Pushback distance on close range block is now almost equal for all characters. So I think for number 2 and 3, some attacks to low profile drive reversal. So I think an example would have been like Blanca's coward crouch, where he goes into the jump move. If I remember correctly, I think that could duck underneath certain drive reversals. So they kind of normalized that across the cast, and as well as the pushback. So definitely some characters had way further pushback on their drive reversals. If I remember correctly, I think Luke kind of had a lot of pushback on his drive reversal. So they made that a lot more consistent, because the big thing, they're changing the frame advantage from -8 to -6 on block, making it just less punishable, right? That's definitely a big deal, and I'll demo that here. So drive reversal is now -6 from -8 on block. So previously, when you blocked a drive reversal, it was standard for pretty much every character to do like a medium into a heavy punish, right? But now, of course, I can't do that, right? So what Ed would do instead would be crouching light kick or something to that sort, so a light into a medium punish. So you would get really beefy punishes previously on this drive reversal block, and it's significantly nerfed for a lot of characters, because for a lot of characters, they don't have 6-frame mediums, right? None of Ed's mediums are 6 frames, and generally what you would get is like your punish counter medium would allow you to combo into your heavy punch to do things like, you know, before this would be the combo, for example. If I were to meter dump a little, $3,346 with some meter spend, right? But because I can't do medium to heavy, that's gonna have to change. So instead of 3,346, for the same amount of bar, I get 2,380, right? So almost a 1,000 damage difference after spending some meter. So it's significantly less punishable. So the other thing to consider is if you're on offense when you're actually in burnout, this is now -2. Because remember, when you're in burnout, things do four more frames of blocks, then this is safe. This is safe when you're in burnout. Now, I think this will be where tech starts developing, because you can't get your turn back, but essentially like drive reversal, like spamming drive reversal when someone's in burnout might be pretty good. And people haven't developed this tech because drive reversal was so punishable always. I feel like people are going to start doing things, potentially like option selecting it. Like you can go through drive reversal with invincible moves. So I kind of like this change. It might be a little nutty and it makes burnout more punishing, but I think people are going to actually get even crazier with their defense because you can do things like that. So people haven't really developed this tech to use invincibility to go through drive reversals yet, because there was no need to. Even when you were in burnout, it was -4. You do a jab to medium punish, sort of like what people would do now when you're not in burnout. So we'll see how this develops. You know, of course, if you had level 3 as well, you could go through it with a level 3. So it's going to be really interesting. And I think people will develop option selects or buffers to punish this. So I think it's going to be both very strong for people to use when people go into burnout. So if you spend all your meter trying to cash out and don't kill them, and then they're in the corner, they have a lot of defensive options against you right now. And I think they reduce the pushback as well because they want people to be able to get consistent punishes. However, if you have a 6-frame medium, you are potentially getting more reward from blocking drive reversal. So it's going to have to take a while for all the scaling for the individual characters to shake out and see how that actually impacts everybody, but that's definitely something to keep in mind. But that's not even the biggest change here. So they added a brand new recovery drive reversal mechanic. Drive reversal can now be performed during the recovery from a knockdown while the command is still the same, forward plus heavy punch plus heavy kick. You can simply perform it early and hold down the input to perform this technique on recovery. Note this version of the drive reversal will not darken the screen or stop time, and the attack startup at 18 frames, which is 2 frames faster than the normal drive reversal. So it looks and feels kind of weird, but basically you do drive reversal on wake up. That's just what you do. So you got to pressure them and they just do it on wake up. So previously drive reversal could only be done when you're blocking something. Now you can do it whenever. So that means this beats things like throw, right? If I go for a throw here, it'll just blow me out of the way. This is actually a little bit faster on startup as well to help it punish more things. But if you go for like a guaranteed jab meaty, you'll still be able to block it. So you're going to have to iron out your Oki for what will actually beat this or not. But it's definitely a huge option to have, and it's going to be an answer to throws. Of course, you can block it. It's still -6 on block. And in fact, I think there's certain like option selects you can do. Like I found this already. So if I do this Oki and they don't wake up drive reversal, this is a true meaty. So this will meaty. And then if they do wake up drive reversal on recovery, for example, you can block. But beyond that, I even found that you can... That wasn't properly timed, but you can option select the jump. So I had a recording earlier where I had the dummy doing this, and if they get hit by the jab or block the jab, you won't get the jump. But if drive reversal occurs and your jab whiffs, you can OS the jump to get a more beefy punish. Right? This is significantly more damaging. Right? 4,064. If I did that like this... Look, that's 1,400 more damage by OSing the jump. So I think there's going to be tech as well with airtight Oki to account for drive reversal as well. So it's still a risky option, but it's and I think people will level up their offense to account for it with some optimization, but it's still very powerful. And so I think this is the remedy for throw loops, and this is also complementary to the Parry nerf, right? So Parry was kind of random and too good on defense, and like random. It made the game volatile because it just led into more degenerate offense. But this drive reversal is like a purely defensive mechanic. It doesn't really give you the same offensive opportunity that a parry does, and it was very weak. So they definitely wanted to buff this and give you an answer to throw loop. So they left all the super oppressive offensive options in the game, and then added these other options to help mitigate that to some degree. So it's going to be very interesting to utilize this, and interesting when people are in burnout as well. I think this makes burnout more difficult to maintain offensive pressure as well. All right, another big one, light attack, standing/crouching adjustment. Initial scaling has changed from 10% to 20%. So they have changed the scaling of light attack. So to explain this a little bit, scaling is what occurs when you have multiple hits in the combo. As you add more hits, each subsequent hit will actually do a smaller percentage of its base damage. So if you look here at the attack data in the middle of the screen, on the left side it shows the damage I'm dealing with the moves, and it also has a 100% right there to show 100% of the damage is being dealt. That's the scaling we're at. So if I do stand medium link to crouch light kick, it still says 100%, 600, then 100%. But all the moves after, the special move after, that did 80, right? And if I were to do like a drive rush cancel, it drops to 68, right? And as I extend this combo, each hit starts doing less and less of its original base damage. But the rules for scaling are not always equal. So starting with a medium, the next hit did 100%. If I start from a low forward drive rush, the next hit does 68% because drive rush scales your combos. But it scales your combos differently based on the starter. So if I start from a low forward drive rush, it does next hit does 68% damage. If I start from a standing medium kick drive rush, the next hit does 85% of its original damage. So there's a lot of rules with the scaling. And if you start from a heavy, same idea, like you kind of generally keep your scaling a little bit higher on the next hit. So what they've done is universally, before when you did a light to a light, it would go from 100 to 90. Now instead it goes from 100 to 80. And then you always drop the scaling from your next value. So that initial bump from 100 to 80 means instead of going 100, 90, 80, you go 100, 80, 70. You much more quickly scale your combo so that every hit does less and less damage when you're starting from lights. So conversions from lights do significantly less damage. Like this combo with my level 2, 2,170. I don't have the exact value of what this used to do, but this is this is baby damage now. This was never a huge amount of damage, but this is like tickling them, and I'm spending level 2 right there. Same thing with doing like this conversion, crouching light kick into OD flicker for Ed, which was like a huge combo route, very common for him to use. This still does good damage, but this used to do close to 4,000 damage. So they definitely wanted to significantly tone down the damage from lights. I mean, same thing for like Luke doing drive rush extensions. So imagine the drive rush extension scaling and the light scaling, right? So if I do this, look how little damage I'm doing. I did less than 2,000 damage for spending all my bar here. So starting from a light and then drive rushing all the way through, you're gonna look how little damage you get here. That is not worth it. You're just gonna end your combo. I get either 1,210 damage meterless, or I spend 3 bars and I get 100 more damage. In very, very few cases is it going to be worth it to drive rush from lights. So random small hits will very rarely turn into big damage. This small 10% to 20% damage scaling is completely changing the damage distribution for some of the most common interactions in the game. Like, this is one of the biggest changes that they had right here. Small random hits are flying going to be random small hits. Yeah, that's true. And the more I step back and think about it, like, I'm a little like peeved about these kind of changes affecting my small openings. I feel like Ed kind of thrives on that. But if I think about it, it is going to diversify the combos and the viewing experience, because you're not going to always see jab, jab, jab into the same combo where they drive rush to stabilize the combo and get the same conversion. People are going to do jab, jab, jab special and reset. Or like, if they do jab, 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 drive rush, expect like an overhead or low reset, or like some kind of oki. Like this is so much more damage. Resetting to a throw does so much more damage than continuing this drive rush combo. Like, that does nothing. Like, this is so much better. I'd much rather do this if I'm going to spend the 3 bars. So I do think it's promoting a bit more of a dynamic gameplay experience where you are thinking harder about spending the resources and you are thinking harder about your conversions rather than just meter dumping all the time. I guess you would do this also, like, the other time I can see this a case where you dump your meter is if you're trying to build super meter. So you can still build a bunch of super meter by meter dumping like that. Like, I built half a super bar right there. So if you're gonna build your level 3 and then go into level 3, that'll be a case when you do it, right? Because level 3 still scale at max 50%. So that's all you gotta do. So that's significantly less damage than before, but, you know, the level 3s will still do their 50% max scaling no matter what. At least there's that. So if you're going to build your level 3 by doing the drive meter dump, or if you're very sure the level 3 will kill, then you'll dump meter. But I do think meter dumping from lights is going to be much, 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 much more situational. Much more situational. All right, guys, and those are all the universal changes I have seen so far that have a big impact on the gameplay for this patch. We will be going over all the individual characters, the big winners and losers in this patch later after we digest a little bit more of the info. But that's all I have for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace. So is Ed hit hard by these universal changes? I do think they directly nerf a lot of his game plan, but it's going to depend on the context of the rest of the game. So I do think Ed is nerfed, but so are a lot of other characters, and a lot of things have changed, so it's hard for me to tell. On paper, he got nerfed, but the whole game is changing.